Good morning and welcome to the South Jersey Issues Show. I'm John Huber and I'll be your host here this morning. As you know, we're on every Sunday morning, 9 to 10, WWAC TV. And what we do is we focus on issues, situation, points of interest to the people that live and visit and work in the South Jersey area. Okay, with that said, Tuesday, May 9th, 2 days from now, Atlantic City voters will be going to the polls to cast ballots for candidates running for city council. That's Tuesday, May 9th. A few weeks ago, voters in Atlantic City and elsewhere in New Jersey went to the polls to vote on school board budgets and school board candidates. On June 6th, in about 4 weeks, voters in Atlantic City and throughout the state of New Jersey will be going to the polls to select candidates for the various parties to run for President, United States Senate, and Congress. And it's possible that in some cases in Atlantic City, in certain wards, voters will have to go back to the polls to again vote for candidates for council if there's not a majority won by a certain candidate in that particular ward in the elections this Tuesday. And of course, then comes November and we have the general election, when you're going to be voting for President, United States Senate, and Congress. Now, think about that. That's 5 times this year Atlantic City voters will be going to the polls, and perhaps 4 times for most other people in the state of New Jersey. My question is, why can't all this be done twice a year? I know many states do it. Pennsylvania does. You have a primary and you have a general election. And the record shows that you get better turnouts and it's less expensive to the taxpayers in those particular areas. Can you imagine 5 times people have to go to the polls in Atlantic City? Okay, we're talking about elections and candidates, and that leads me to introduce our guest this morning. And with me this morning is Edward G. Janasik, PhD, from Cape May County, who's the Democrat-endorsed candidate for the United States Congress District 2. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for coming in. What do you think about what I just said there? Before we get into discussing Ed's positions on different issues, about this business of going to the polls so many times. I know they've been kicking it around in Trenton for a number of years now, whether they just have a primary and a general election.
Well, John, there is such a thing as voter fatigue. Years ago, political scientists studied this particular question and found out that voter fatigue sets in even within an election. There are many more votes cast for the top of the ticket, whatever that may be. President, governor, county executive, many more votes cast for the top of the ticket than the bottom of the ticket. Okay. People get tired by the time they get to the bottom of the ticket. Well, if they get tired, it's within one election. How tired do they get if they're always trotting to the polls?
Yeah.
But history and tradition, once they get set in a state's political culture, is very, very difficult to overcome. And even though not many people show up in these elections, if you were to try to take them away, I have an idea that you'd be charged with being undemocratic, elitist, so on and so on.
You know, whether people show up or not, it still costs money to open those polling places, to staff them with the poll watchers, the people that take the things. The money is spent.
Yes.
And I've mentioned it before on this show and when I've had other guests in Pennsylvania when I was involved up there. We would get, for school board elections, which happen to run the same time as primaries and a general election. I mean, if we didn't get 70% turnout in a primary, there was something wrong with the committee people. And particularly, and we get 90% or more, in the general election, people voting for school board and things of that nature. And I think the same thing would happen down here. Be that as it may, Ed, thanks for the comment. I want to move on.
Before we leave the point, in the Army, we had a field manual on military courtesy and discipline. Right. And one of the statements in that I'll never forget, familiarity breeds contempt. And the idea was for enlisted men and officers not to intermingle. Right. Well, on the issue of elections, the same thing. Familiarity breeds contempt. The more you do it, the less the less important it comes to be.
Yeah, it was always a big deal in Pennsylvania to look forward to that primary and the general election. And I want to tell the people a little bit about you, so why don't you just sit back and relax. You know all about you.
Thank
I
you.
want to kill the people that are listening a little bit about Ed. You're a very interesting person. Edward G. Janosik, Cape May, New Jersey. You're married. Unfortunately, I understand you just lost your wife, which we're sorry to hear about that.
Thank you, John.
You have 2 children, 2 daughters. What do your daughters do?
The older one is a professor of history at Hobart and William Smith Colleges in Geneva, New York. The younger one teaches gifted 6th graders in suburban Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. As I said, Ed is the Democrat-endorsed candidate for the United States Congress District 2, right here in Atlantic County, Cape May, Burlington,
Salem,
Salem.
parts of Gloucester, and
Right.
a little swatch of Burlington.
You joined the Army in 1940?
Yes.
Why'd you join the Army in 1940? There wasn't even a draft then.
Well, they were getting ready for it, John.
Okay.
We had our, what was known as our draft number, and then they drew the second time and came up with what was called the order number. That was the order in which your previous number was going to be called.
Okay.
And my order number was pretty low. I was teaching high school in southeast Missouri at the time, and there was a National Guard outfit that was going to be called up to active duty on December 23rd, 1940. And since I knew I was going to go in shortly, I thought it would be useful to go in with at least a few people that I knew. So that's how I ended up.
I mean, you
that
went in
early.
as a private and you came out as a major.
That's right.
Wonderful. You went to the University of Pennsylvania where you got your PhD. University of Pennsylvania, you got your master's in Southeast Missouri State where there's BS in education. You've taught in American government, you've taught political science, you've taught interest groups, European government. Teaching experience, visiting professor, Charles University, Prague, Czechoslovakia.
How about that?
What about that? Tell me about that.
Well, that was, I stopped teaching after I had that job. I offered a course on the American political system at Charles University, which, by the way, was founded in 1346 by the Bohemian King Charles IV.
Okay.
And it was a great job. I had about a dozen students who spoke English, and I did what I could to make the lectures meaningful to them. But the point is that I worked 1 day a week and had 6-day weekends, and that's a great job. I knew I'd never do any better.
You're a visiting professor at Philadelphia College of Textile Science, also at St. Joseph's University. Professor, Department of Political Science, State University College, Geneseo. Geneseo, rather, New York. Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, University of Pennsylvania. Lecturer in Political Science at Franklin and Marshall. Assistant Professor of Political Science, Washington College. Done a lot of traveling, Great Britain, France, Italy, Germany, been around the world pretty much. Let's see. Yugoslavia, July 1996 to attend a seminar on the University Today. What was going on in Yugoslavia in those days? Was that Mr. Tito still involved?
Tito was still involved. And, you know, looking at it from one point of view, you could say that that's one country that should have stayed under the control of the communists and under the control of a strong man. Because as long as he was there, he was able to keep the competing nationalisms under control.
Yeah.
Once he disappeared from the scene, they fell to quarreling among one another, and we know what the outcome of that has been. It's been pure disaster for the people that live there.
Still is.
Still is.
That's
Still
right.
is.
Because I know it says here you interviewed a lot of the local leaders in the Yugoslav Socialist Alliance. And what did you learn from those meetings?
Well, I learned that the people I was in all parts of Yugoslavia, the places that have now become independent, Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia. These are people very, very proud and proud of the fact that they were able to free themselves from rule by the Turks decades ago. But that occupation by the Turks just added another source of controversy, because one of the reasons the bitterness over there now is that some of the Slavic people converted to the Muslim religion. They all speak Slavic, they speak the same language, but in addition to the regional differences between Serbia and Croatia and Bosnia, you have the difference between Roman Catholics in Croatia, Serbian Serbian Orthodox Catholics in Serbia, and then the Muslim population, and it's a volatile mixture.
You know, you're bringing on an interesting thing here. Of course, what we hear mostly here is the fact that these battles are going on are mostly nationalistic battles, where actually there's an underlying religious problem.
Oh yes, indeed there is.
So the religious wars as well as nationalistic wars.
I've always regretted that the Pope or some top representative of his and the leader of the Serbian Orthodox Church didn't get together publicly and say, let us stop this nonsense. This has gone far enough. This is having too horrible an impact on the adherents of all religions. And let's stop this. But unfortunately, that was never done.
What do you see as the outcome of what's going on over there? I mean, do you have any opinion as to where it's going to end, if it's going to end, and how it's going to end?
They have been fighting one another for such a long period of time that it's very discouraging to think that there's ever going to be an end to it. But having said that, let's remember the fact that France and Germany were at one another's throats for 100 years. And eventually, that issue, the tensions between them were modified, and now we find France and Germany the closest of partners in the Western European Union and other European organizations that are based on friendly relations. So it has happened. It has happened that some of these old enmities get solved, and let's just pray that that happens in the Balkans.
Well, if you saw the paper today, the IRA in Ireland has agreed to put away the guns and whatnot with the idea of putting together finally the peace process over there. So as you say, it has happened, and maybe it can happen over there in Ireland and hopefully over in Yugoslavia.
That's such wonderful news.
Yep. Czechoslovakia.
Yes.
You were there in June 1992.
Yes.
What's going on?
I'm of Slovak extraction.
Right.
And the reason why Czechoslovakia broke up is it's unfortunate that it happened in my judgment, but they had an election there in 1992. An extreme conservative, economically speaking man got elected as Prime Minister in the Czech Republic.
Name?
Klaus, Václav Klaus. In Slovakia, an ex-communist and a not very ex-communist by the name of Mečiar got elected Prime Minister there. These two guys looked at one another, one an extreme capitalist, almost a libertarian, no regulation, no government regulation at all, and the other one a very recent collectivist. They looked at one another and said, I don't want to modify my position to suit this guy. I'm going to have to give up too much. And they both said that. So instead of following the will of the people, and 2/3 of both Czechs and Slovaks wanted to keep the country together, but these two leaders didn't go to a public referendum. They insisted on their parliaments deciding the issue, parliaments that they controlled. So they decided to break the country up against the will of the people, as I say.
And they broke it up into?
And they broke it up into the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic.
Right.
Then the Slovaks had the misfortune of having this guy Mečiar, who played the nationalist theme. As I've told some people, in order to be 100% Slovak nationalist, you have to hate the Jews, you have to hate the Czechs, you have to hate the Hungarians, you have to hate the Gypsies, and if you hate everybody, you're 100% Slovak nationalist. and he played that theme. He only had a minority of the country supporting him, but he kept playing that card time after time, and they finally got rid of him about 18 months ago. And I noticed the other day where the state police broke into his apartment to get a hold of some papers that he had refused to turn over to the government that they needed in a legal case.
Right. Interesting. Listen, we have a caller. AC from AC, how are you?
Good morning, John. I have a few questions for Mr. Janicek.
Go right ahead.
I am thinking of supporting him, but before I give him my support, I would like to know where he stands on certain issues.
Well, how are we going to get to that?
I am a hawk. I am for building up our military. I am for Star Wars. I am for spending as much money as necessary to make sure our military is strong.
That's one question.
Question number one. And then I have another. Could I give the questions and then he can reply?
Go ahead.
Question number two. I am only for selective trade with communist China or Russia. By selective trade, I mean trade in farm goods, but not to give them any high-tech military goods that they can use to improve their military.
That's two.
And then another question I have for the gentleman is this. I am for building the Star Wars nuclear submarine. And Mr. Lobiondo voted against that. I would like to know where this gentleman stands on that. And finally, I would like to ask this gentleman, why didn't you give out position papers to the press? And that is a free way of communicating with the public. And let us know where you stand on Medicare, where you stand on Social Security, and why you waited to the last minute to start hitting talk shows and TV, because the public wants to know who this person is. They don't want to see a man popping up the last minute with a platform. And there are major issues that I want to know.
Okay,
I appreciate if you will respond to them.
I say appreciate your call, and listen, you made the program because these things we were going to talk about, we have them down here in my notes, we were going to get to them. So let's jump right into them, AC. Thanks very much for your call. Before you get into those, let me just finish right here, because they were good questions. As I said, we do have these notes down here that these are issues we were going to talk about. But as far as your background is concerned, I just want to finish off with the publications you've written. A number of articles, I know, on suburban balance of power, political activity in the Philadelphia Businessmen, that's interesting. Britain's new labor leaders, you've written articles on that. The American National Nominating Convention, that'd be an interesting one to read. You're also involved in local politics in Delaware County, 1952 to 1960. What were you doing in Delaware County politics in 1962, 52 to 60?
Well, I was a precinct committeeman, a ward leader. I was secretary of the Democratic Party in Upper Darby Township. And
you ran for the General Assembly then?
In 1958, yeah.
And you were an alternate delegate at large at the Democratic National Convention, 1960, 1976.
Yeah.
You're involved in politics down in Cape May? What's your party affiliation? No, you're a Democrat down there. President of the party?
I reorganized the Democratic Club of the Cape Mays, which I would like to say finances itself in a rather extraordinary way. Mm-hmm. We don't have these 50-50s at the end of the meeting to get postage to send out the next notices. We have a voluntary pledge program where 23 of us pledge anywhere from $1 to $25 a month, and we've raised over $2,000 in that way, and we're able to keep our club going.
I see under honors you've been picked as Who's Who in America in 1972, and up to date right now you're still Who's Who in America. Who's Who in American Politics in 1979. Very interesting. I'm in what they call Who's That, you know, they call that. But you presently, as I said, you're the president of the Condominium Association.
Well, and let me tell you, there are 60 unit owners in the condominium.
That must be tough.
And if you can deal with that, you can deal with anything that is required of a congressional candidate.
Let me tell you something. I've read this resume here, this background. I've listened to you. You're a very intelligent person, obviously. Extremely intelligent, as a matter of fact. Let me ask you a question. Why are you running? Why are you running for Congress?
Oh, I've got 3 or 4 reasons.
Now, what's your family think about this?
Well, let me be candid. My late wife detested publicity and controversy. She was an extremely private person.
She had quite an educational background herself.
Yes, she wrote 8 books in the field of psychiatric nursing. She was a better academic than I was. Actually, she really played according to the rules of the game, but she was a very private person. And while she was alive, I respected her feelings. And even though I was active in politics, I did not run for public office. We were married for 57 years. And when your mate of 57 years dies, even though all the years were not tranquil, there's a big hole in your life. And this opportunity came along. And I thought, well, Ed, if you don't run for Congress when you're 82, you're probably never going to do it. So I decided to jump in.
Good.
Another is the challenge. You know, you teach political science, you teach political parties, campaigns, elections, and so on. You teach that for 40 years. When the chance comes along to actually do it instead of talking about it,
Right.
That was another reason why.
Now, you brought up your
jumped
age.
in.
I wasn't going to bring up your age. You mentioned it, so just, you know, you brought up 82. But
Fair
I'm going to tell you something. You look like you're in great shape.
Well, I try to stay that way. I got great genes from my parents, and God has been good to me in the sense that I've had no serious illness of any kind. I go to the fitness center 5 times a week. There's a nice little fitness center, Cape Fitness in West Cape May, that I go to, and this helps keep me going. I go up there in the morning and I get my batteries charged up, and that takes care of me the rest of the day.
Okay, listen, we're going to have to take a break, Ed. And when we come back, we're going to get into those questions that AC raised, plus a number of other issues that I know that are on the minds of a lot of people. So rejoin us in about 2 minutes.
On Your Big Break, 5 everyday people get the chance they've always dreamed of, performing as their favorite musical superstars, including a security guard who becomes Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam. And in just 1 week, see the best of the best in the semifinal championships. It's real people really singing, and the audience picks the winner. Dick Clark presents Your Big Break.
Your Big Break tonight at 9 on Atlantic City's TV 53.
Every day, Ameridebt helps more people with money problems. People like Tom Baker.
My credit card debt was outrageous. Then I called Ameridebt. They contacted my creditors and got my payments almost cut in half. Now I have only one small monthly bill.
Ameridebt is a nonprofit organization that offers free consultations to consumers seeking to eliminate their debt. People like the Shaws.
Every month I pay our credit card bills, but the balances never seem to get smaller.
Ameridebt got our interest rates reduced, and now the balances are dropping dramatically.
And what's even more amazing is our payments are less than before.
Call 1-800-469-3399. Regardless of your credit, in minutes join the thousands of people who have turned their financial lives around. People like Maria Rinaldi.
Before I called Ameridebt, the creditors were calling every day. I thought bankruptcy was the only way out. Now I'm debt-free, and my credit rating has been restored.
Call 1-800-469-3399. 1-800-469-3399. Ameridebt, helping America get out of debt.
Come on, everyone, get happy.
We're the Partridge Family.
It's time for the Monkees. The brilliant minds at the Screen Gems Network bring you the Partridge Family and the Monkees.
What kind of a warped, maniacal mind could be plotting such a conspiracy?
It was all Danny's idea. 5 days a week, spend 60 minutes in the groovy, hip world of classic TV.
That's for the benefit of any of you who've tuned in late.
The Partridge Family and the Monkees, only on the Screen Gems Network.
Monday through Friday at 5 on Atlantic City's TV 53.
Welcome back to the South Jersey Issues Show. I'm John Huber, and I'm visiting this morning with Dr. Edward Genesee, the Democrat candidate, Democrat-endorsed candidate for U.S. Congress, District 2. Let's get on to some of these questions. Doctor, the position paper situation that AC raised, about your failure, as he put it, to issue or late stage of the game a position paper on different issues. What's your response to that?
Well, the questioner made some comments about my jumping in at the last minute and not having position papers on every issue that is before the American people. I don't know what we're the last minute before. The primary election isn't until isn't until early June. The general election isn't until early November. There are, I don't know how many candidates have 18 different position papers that they're ready to put out the minute they win a state or a city or county convention. I didn't get into it until the 29th of March when the Atlantic County Democrats had a convention, and I was fortunate enough to be endorsed by them. And I think that they're a fine, intelligent group of people for having taken that wise decision. As far as spending money on national defense, you know, we did that back in the 1980s, and the national debt rose from a little over $1 trillion to over $4 trillion, and because we kept throwing money at the military. It was a case of giving the military things that in some cases they weren't even asking for. There are other needs that the country has. There are a lot of people in this country interested in protecting Social Security. There are a lot of people in this country interested in protecting Medicare. There are some that think we ought to follow conservative economic principles and pay down the national debt instead of interest on the national debt being the second biggest item in the budget. The question of adequate financing of the military, there's no answer to that. How much is necessary? How much is enough? This is something that a Republican Congress and a Democratic president have been reaching compromises on over the years, and whatever positions they take, I think the country has pretty much accepted. And as far as selective trade is concerned, I don't know what kind of trade selective trade is. There are embargoes on sensitive equipment that is being sold abroad, but it's very difficult to be the world's biggest trading agent and then say, well, we're going to do this and we're not going to do that. Either you trade or you don't trade. And drawing these artificial lines make it extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I think one of the things that the caller was referring to naturally was this business of supplying the Chinese with some of this high-tech information as it comes that can be used for some of these missiles. And there was, there's been a lot of questions raised, about that. And should we be doing that, of course, because looking at it, China is probably, while you have other rogue nations out there, obviously, that are working on developing these nuclear weapons, China, when you look at 1 billion people that they have over there, is probably the biggest threat to world peace than any other country in the world today. And to give them this material, this technology, which would speed up the process in the eyes of many people, is something that a lot of people are against.
Well, it's very difficult to draw these lines, as I see it, John, in terms of trading with any particular country. No one purposely gives China access to sensitive military information. No one purposely sets out to do that. But indirectly, as a consequence of engaging in other kind of trading activities, it could well be that they would pick up some information, either second-hand or third-hand. You trade with this country trades with this country, and this country trades with China.
Well, I think an example of that is Israel. Obviously, Israel has been providing a lot of the information, a lot of technology to China, and Israel's been getting a lot of that from the United States, and I don't think the United States is too happy about Israel providing this information to China.
No, they're not. Yet Israel is our best ally in the Middle East.
Right.
So these are very complicated questions. But and as far as China is concerned, look, as a Democrat, I've been critical at times, sometimes severely critical of things that Richard Nixon has done. But on the other hand, let's not forget the fact that it was Richard Nixon who reopened the door to China. And this was on the advice of that great Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger. Long term, it is in the best interests of the United States to get along with China, to find reasons to get along with China, rather than to come up with every possible excuse not to.
And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Am I correct? The fact they got 1 billion people, a big military, plus the fact it opens up a heck of a lot of markets, economics.
Of course.
Right.
Of course. That's why the business community in the United States, Republican or Democratic, is in favor of most favored nation status with China, because they realize that the more countries trade with one another, the more their economies become intermingled, the easier it is to work out some of the more difficult problems.
Yeah. Okay, we have another caller. Peter from Galloway, how are you?
John, good morning. How you doing?
Good.
Mr. Janicek, good morning.
Morning, sir.
Just one point. John, you had mentioned earlier something about age. I'll be honest with you. As far as age goes, I couldn't care less if the person representing me in Washington was 24 or 84. As long as they know two things: what the issues are that concern the members of New Jersey, and number two, which is not done now, is apply common sense. We have lost all common sense because, I think, of special interest groups, whatever you want to call it. And just a very, very small example. I was out at an all-night store late one night this week. In the store is a fellow literally cleaning out shelves of donuts that weren't sold to be thrown out. I said to him, why can't we take these and donate them to the Atlantic City Mission or some mission, because these people are hungry? No, can't do it because there's a law that says we have to destroy them. That is absolutely absurd. If I went in 5 minutes earlier, bought the same donut for 59 cents, nothing said. These are we have to start at the basis of things. This is common sense. We have food, we're destroying it when it can be put to good use, and it's not because it's some sort of stupid law.
Okay, Peter. Peter, thanks very much for your call and your comments. What's your reaction?
Well, Peter, this is a state law, and I will agree with your characterization of it. It is stupid. Whatever the reasons for the passage of the law were are lost in the mists of history, I'm sure. At one time, there may have been a good reason for that kind of a law to be passed. Whether it should stay there at the present time is something that the New Jersey State Assembly should address. But the concern about food wastage coming from my background, Central European background, man, one of the things you didn't waste was food because you didn't know when some more was going to come along. I agree with you completely. I'm appalled that good food is thrown away when it could be used to help those that are down on their luck in the Atlantic City area.
Peter raised another question there, and I was going to mention this later on, because as far as the issues are concerned, and he brought up the subject of special interest groups, I commented on this show about this a few weeks ago, but that comes under, I guess we're going to tie special interest groups into campaign finance reform.
Yes.
Which is a big issue being kicked around because the term special interest groups and campaign finance reform go together.
Of course.
What's your thoughts on this and as far as campaign finance reform? Is it going to happen? Can it happen? Will it ever happen?
Well, it would happen in the United States Senate if the Republican Party wasn't filibustering the issue. You know, in the Republican presidential primary, one of the things that differentiated John McCain from George Bush was the fact that McCain was one of the sponsors of the McCain-Feingold bill in the Senate that would at least take some initial steps in dealing with the problem of campaign finance reform. And I thought that Governor Bush's response was a very novel one. He said, well, we can't have that because it would hurt the Republican Party. Well, now, come on, Governor. Are you saying that what's good for the Republican Party is good for the country?
Oh, somebody said that about General Motors.
Someone said that about General Motors, and we laughed him off the block. I was amazed. I was amazed that the governor would take that position. Let's look at what's good for the political system rather than what's good for either the Democratic or the Republican Party. And the money that goes into the campaigns today is really getting pretty much out of hand.
But one of the things that, what is a special interest group? I mean, who are special interest groups? This is the thing that's not really been clarified. Oh, I know what they're thinking, the big PAC groups and so forth.
Well, there are hundreds of
Probably
special interest groups in the country, and if you agree with them, you call them interest groups. If you disagree with them, you call them pressure groups, so both political parties benefit from the money that come from interest groups, but they range from the AFL-CIO to the National Association of Manufacturers, from pro-life groups to pro-choice groups to environmental groups.
But don't they represent practically every segment of our society? Special interest groups represent at some point in time every segment of our society, I would guess.
Well, this is true, but John, it wasn't always like that.
True.
50 years ago, political parties played a much greater role in American politics than they do now. And I think in their infinite lack of wisdom, the American people have opted for interest groups running our political system rather than having our political parties run them. I thought it was better when where interest groups were still functioning and they would associate themselves with one political party or the other, try to influence both. But it was the political parties that then sort of led the debate, led the discussion. Should we move in this direction on an issue? Should we move in that direction on an issue? One of the reasons why it's difficult to deal with a very complicated issue like health care today is that there are about, maybe 50 organized interest groups that are pulling in every direction. And keep this in mind, interest groups, the purpose of interest groups is to organize minorities. The purpose of political parties, both Republican and Democratic, is to organize majorities. And if you have 50 interest groups involved in dealing with a difficult question like health care, it's very, very hard for the political parties to come up with a majority because the minorities have been so well organized and they're pulling in every direction on the compass.
Glad you brought that up because it's going to give me the opportunity to say something again that I've said to your opponents, to others as they've appeared on this show from time to time, and you've put a number on these groups when you say 50. When it comes to health care in this country, which everyone says is a problem for a lot of people because of the expense, the cost, and the fact that a lot of people don't have coverage, you know, to help them with this, you know, with these serious problems. It's been my contention that the only answer to this, if there is an answer to the problem, which has been kicked around for years and years and years now, the advent of the HMOs and how unfair they are to doctors and so forth and so on. And you have all these different, you say 50 groups involved in this, 50 different groups all involved with the healthcare system, special interest groups, if you will. And I've said that the only other way to go about this thing is the president, whoever he might be at the time, whether he's a Republican or a Democrat, should get the representatives of each one of these 50 groups, if that's how many there are, one person that represent those groups, into a room that'll hold 50 people and conduct a 5-minute meeting. And during that 5-minute meeting, and maybe you can start this if you get down there, or irritate some of your, you know, antagonize some of your people to do it. Give these people 1 year to come up with a solution to the health care problems confronting the people in this country today, those with insurance, those without insurance. They've got 1 year to come up with a solution that's satisfactory. And at the end of 1 year, unless they do it themselves, then the government's going to take over, and then we might have what people don't want anyway, many people, socialized medicine. Why can't something like that be done? These are the people that deliver the cost. These are the people that deliver the systems. Why shouldn't they, under our free enterprise, capitalistic democratic system, have the opportunity to come up with the answers, rather than the government imposing the answers?
Well,
couldn't they do it?
I said it was, no, they probably couldn't. They probably couldn't.
Then we're going to have problems.
We're going to have problems. And the term socialized medicine that you used, in other words, what you're talking about is medicine for everybody. When you say, should everybody have medical care in the United States, a lot of people would say yes. But if you say, should we have socialized medicine in the United States? Oh, no, we can't have that.
Same thing.
It's just a label. Sure. It's just a label that was developed 50 years ago by a doctor by the name of Morris Fishbein, who was head of the American Medical Association, to knock down Harry Truman's idea of a national health system. And I often wonder where we would be in our health system today if that wise man, Harry Truman, who is my personal political hero, if the policies and program that Harry Truman had in mind 50 years ago had been followed, I know we would still be having problems with our medical care system. But I think that they might be a little different than the ones we're facing at the present time. And one of the difficulties, John, is that some of the same groups that were opposing Clinton's medical care system back in 1993 and 1994.
That's Hillary Clinton's?
Are now, yes, are now, well, it was a lot bigger than that. She was the point person on it. Now, some of those groups are in favor of things that they weren't in favor of 6 years ago. So the picture keeps changing all the time. And one of the things that forced the change is the unpopularity that many HMOs have created by the kinds of decisions that they make. And you know, a lot of people say, oh, I don't want a government bureaucrat making my medical decisions. Would they prefer to have some clerk with 3 weeks training in an insurance company making the medical decisions?
Well, that's what they're getting now.
Which is what they're getting now.
Yep. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our discussions with Dr. Edward Janasek concerning Social Security and other non-controversial subjects.
That's
so
right.
Rejoin us in about a minute and a half.
I took the risks and started my own business. Taking risks, that's what you have to do. But here's a way to help your business with no risk at all. Just call for your free trial version of QuickBooks Pro, America's #1 best-selling small business accounting software. That's right, I said free. For no money, not even a shipping charge, you'll get this free trial version of QuickBooks Pro from the makers of Quicken, so you know it's easy to use. Want to write a check? You just start typing, and QuickBooks Pro fills in the rest. It shows you how much money you're owed and who owes it. It even prints invoices with your company logo. And QuickBooks Pro can save you even more time with features like estimating, and job costing. And it integrates with Microsoft Word and Excel. Look, we all take risks in business. Now take advantage of an honest, no-risk opportunity. Call for your free QuickBooks Pro trial version now. There's no bill, no hassle, there's no risk. You can't do better than that.
Call 1-888-305-8200.
When Nick wants to be a millionaire,
We'll be holding open auditions for new contestants right here in Matheson.
there's one small problem.
Back to school, Munchkin. There's an age requirement.
Eureka! Adulthood, here I come.
I need a shave.
But now,
Wow, he's big.
he's a big winner, too.
You're our new champion.
And the Zelinskis may lose him for good.
I don't care if I'm a grown-up forever. I never want to be a kid again.
On the next Honey.
Thursday at 6 on Atlantic City's TV 53.
On the next Psi Factor, the team steps into a bizarre alternate reality where tempers flare
Watch out, Mia, or your partner here is going to stab you in the back.
and fears become fatal.
My pulse is 140. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure.
Can they escape it?
So you're saying none of this is really happening? No, it's happening. But it's just happening on a different plane.
Or will they be trapped forever? Next time on Psi Factor, Chronicles of the Paranormal.
Tomorrow at 10 on Atlantic City's TV 53.
Okay, welcome back to the South Jersey Issue Show. I'm John Huber, and I'm visiting this morning with Dr. Edward Janicek, the Democrat-endorsed candidate for U.S. Congress District 2, which takes in Atlantic County, Ocean County, not Ocean County, Cape May County, Cumberland County, Salem County, Gloucester County,
a bit of Burlington.
Bit of Burlington, and Cumberland County. Big area. Have you been able to get around all these places? That's a big area.
I haven't yet.
No, but you will.
I've not penetrated Salem and Gloucester and Burlington, although I do have some friends up there.
Okay. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this next topic that I'm going to throw at you, but I'm going to throw it at you and then I'm going to make a comment. The abortion issue.
Yes.
Should this issue, the abortion issue, be taking up as much time and space and conversation as it's been taken up over the years with both political parties? Should it be? Isn't it a private matter? I mean,
Well,
it just dominates.
Many people feel that these are decisions that should be made between the woman, her doctor, and her spiritual advisor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be quite happy if it stayed that way. This is an issue that people think they can make political capital of. And John, I've observed many of these issues, and it just isn't abortion, it's gun control, it's the environment, the health care delivery issue. The extremists on both sides don't help reach a solution. As a matter of fact, they are impediments to reaching a solution. There isn't any one of these issues in which there aren't moderate, sensible people that take different positions on it. And if they were allowed to come up with a solution, I think we would have sensible solutions. For one thing, some people want a constitutional amendment banning abortion. Do they think for a minute that if such a constitutional amendment would pass, that abortions would cease in the United States?
Didn't stop people from drinking.
Of course not. Of course not. The point is that well-off women would get their abortions just the way they used to get divorces, and it's the middle class and poor women that would suffer as a result. And what you would have would be a resurgence of back alley abortions and some poor women mutilating themselves. That's something I don't think that we want to go back to. And I think that on the other hand, I would use the tax code to encourage people to adopt. If some way could be done, the more difficult an adoption case is, give people who are willing to take on those burdens even greater support. I'm not in favor of abortion. I would like there not to be any. But given human nature, there are probably there are probably going to be abortions, and the way to handle it is in the safest way and the most humane way for the people that are involved.
Let's move on to another subject, which is non-controversial. Now, the Social Security issue. Depending on who you listen to, depends on when Social Security is going to run dry. What is the problem, and what, as quickly as possible, is there a simple answer to the Social Security, quote, problem? They say now it's not going to run out till 2037.
The basic problem is that when Social Security was established, there were something like 10, I'm not sure about my numbers on this one, but there are about 10 people who were working for every retired person to whom they were contributing their Social Security taxes. Now it's down to about 3 to 1, and as time goes on, the ratio will become even more disadvantageous. And then there is the baby boom generation that is going to be retiring soon. So these are some of the demographics of the problem. But there is this huge surplus that our present economy is generating. There is money enough there to make the Social Security system financially feasible for the indefinite future.
There is enough money.
Yes.
So you think that surplus then, all that surplus should go toward protecting Social Security?
It wouldn't even need all of it.
Okay.
From the analyses that I read, there's enough money there to protect Social Security, to protect Medicare, and to reduce the national debt, so we pay out less money in interest on the national debt, which, as I said before, is the second biggest item in the budget after national defense.
If you're elected, how would you vote on what to do with the surplus?
What I just said: protect Social Security, protect Medicare, pay down the national debt, and tax reduction.
There would be all 4 of those then?
Yes.
And there'd be enough to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
However, the tax reduction would be a limited tax reduction, and it would be aimed at those segments of the population that need a leg up. I guess one of the reasons why I'm a Democrat is because if someone's making $1 million a year, I can't get too concerned about the amount of taxes that he pays. I look at how much is left over after the taxes are paid. I used to complain a little from time to time about my taxes, and my daughters would lay a beady eye on me and say, Dad, how much do you have left after you pay them? And that sort of put it into perspective for me.
But doesn't the issue come down to the fact that when you use the term what's left over, a lot of times what's left over is what helps create other jobs and expands businesses. So it is important that there be a lot left over in many, many instances in order to continue to create jobs, expand business.
Well, there are a lot of us that are in the position of being able to have some left over to invest in the economy. Yeah. All you have to do is look at the millions and millions of people that have mutual funds. I mean, we're not direct stockholders, but indirectly we're stockholders. I've seen astounding figures on the proportion of the population that is doing their bit in terms of job creation. It just isn't the extremely wealthy people in the country that now have a stake in how well the economy does. It's ordinary people like us.
Yeah. There are many issues that we could be talking about, and we'd need about a 6-hour show in order to do it.
Yes, we would.
And we're about running out of time on this 1-hour show. We've touched on some of the things, but let me ask you a strict, direct question, Doctor.
Hit me.
Are you going to make a strong run at this, assuming that you get through the primary, and from all indications you're not going to have much opposition, even though there is one individual running on the ticket against you? in the primary in June. But assuming that you win, now you've got coming up in the general election. Real quick, are you going to make a strong run at this? Are you going to have enough money to do this, to run against, but apparently is a very popular, Republican candidate out there?
Well, Mr. LoBiondo is a popular person. I understand that he has a war chest of something like $800,000, which I'm not going to be able to match in any way. But I have found out from studying past elections that money isn't everything. And the more money you have, the less bang you get for the buck. I'll be able to raise enough money to put up a credible campaign. The fact that Frank LoBiondo is running for his fourth term and seems to be quite popular doesn't bother me too much. When I was a kid, we had a saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. I'm going to...
in other words, you're just not going to give him a free ride.
He's not going to get a free ride as he got 2 years ago. That was that's one of my reasons for entering the race. But I fully intend to really carry the battle to him. I'm very pleased with the success that I've had so far. And there are very unusual things that happen in elections. We don't have time to go into it here, but the consequences of the Republican senatorial primary might have some bearing on how this election turns out in November.
Well, it could very well. Doctor, I want to thank you for coming in. I've enjoyed this hour. I've learned some things about you, and I want to wish you good luck with everything, your health and so forth. You're looking great, and I'll probably bump into you again between now and sometime in the future.
Well, John,
any quick final words, 10 seconds.
John, I appreciate your having me on the show. It's been great. It was a fast hour.
Good. Okay, that's it for this week. Remember what I've said. Don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. It's been nice talking to you. I want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you around.
You're watching Atlantic City's hometown TV station, WWAC TV 53.
Hi, I'm Perry Barcy. At the accounting firm of Barcy & Fabrico CPAs in Vineland, we have one goal in mind.